Good morning, kids. Happy Monday. It seems like this week has just been a plethora of people who don't understand citations or sources or authorities. So let me try to give a real quick rundown on how it works. In the law, the way authorities work is, assuming it's a question like a constitutional question, your table of authorities in a paper would start with Supreme Court decisions for a constitutional question, and they would work their way down from Supreme Court decisions to Court of Appeals decisions to district court opinions. If this is going to be in a state court, or if you're looking at state court decisions for whatever reason, then you would jump over. After you've gotten down through all the federal courts, you would jump over to state courts, and you'd start off with whatever state, the top court of whatever state you're in. Normally the Supreme Court, except in, I guess, New York, where the Supreme Court is the bottom court, but whatever. And then you'd work your way down through whatever that state's court of appeals was, and then you get down to just a regular old, if your state allows it, you get down to the regular old district court, superior court, local court, if your state allows you to cite it. Then you would move on to the actual text of the law, which would be starting off again with the Constitution, and then any federal laws, and then state constitution, and then any state laws. I guess in there, after federal laws, you'd go federal constitution, federal laws, then it would go executive orders, and then state law or state constitution, then state laws. Executive orders preempt state law. Anyway, and then after you get through those, then you would go to learned treatises, I believe is what they call them, which would be like practice guides. I guess technically you could cite to legal papers published in legal journals, but you would never get down to, let's say, just for an example, an opinion piece published in the Sacramento Bee. You just wouldn't get down there. That's not what is considered an authority in the law. When you jump over into science or medicine, you've got a couple things that you want to look at. You want to cite to a peer-reviewed paper. And that peer-reviewed paper, you're going to look at a couple of different analytics. First of all, you want to look at the paper itself. You want to see how many times that paper's been cited. If it's been cited a lot, you know that paper has had a lot of impact. That's a good sign. That means that other scientists are taking that paper seriously. And the reason why that's important is because scientists have the basis in science to know when someone's spouting bullshit, generally speaking. And they can actually recreate the experiments or go through the data again to verify that there is no hanky-panky going on. There's been multiple scientists who've published papers only to have other people publish other papers saying that this is actually wrong. These experiments are not repeatable, and therefore there must have been either error or disingenuous intent. So you want to look at, first of all, the impact factor of the article you're citing. Another thing that you really want to look at is the impact factor of the journal that it's published in. Shitty journals have shitty impact factors. Shitty journals don't do as good of a job in peer reviewing the articles. The peer reviewing is done by the journal. The journal itself is the one who's supposed to send the paper out to other experts in that particular field, who would then look at it and determine whether or not there are any glaring errors, anything in it that is just demonstrably wrong. And after you get done looking at, another good thing to do is look at the impact factor of the author. The lead author on it is typically going to be the person who has the best impact factor, the most number of cases, or the most number of papers cited, a high paper count per year, and a lot of citations per paper. That's really what you're looking for. That shows you somebody who knows what he's talking about, and who other people in that particular field of science pay attention to. because we can't be experts. You and I can't be experts. I'm not an expert on most things. You may notice that while I disagree with the lockdown orders, that's a political question. That's maybe even a legal question. I haven't said that they are unconstitutional. I said I think they're unconstitutional, but I am not in a position to tell you that they're unconstitutional. But I haven't opined on the medical aspect of it, on the science aspect of the virus, because I am not qualified to do so. And most people should realize they're not qualified to do so. They typically don't. Now, another thing that you want to look at if you're dealing with, if you're trying to cite somebody, is their particular credentials. For example, yesterday on Blue Bacon's stream, Popcorn 1967 was holding out somebody as a constitutional lawyer. Now, again, somebody who might practice mostly constitutional law may call himself a constitutional lawyer, but all lawyers deal with the Constitution. The Constitution pervades just about every aspect of the law. So calling yourself a constitutional lawyer is pretty meaningless. But the guy wasn't a constitutional lawyer because he wasn't a lawyer. So that was a problem. The second issue is that he had a PhD in constitutional law. Now, you might ask yourself, what the hell is a PhD in constitutional law? I don't know. I have a Juris Doctorate in the law, but I've never heard of anybody getting a PhD in a specific area of law. That doesn't make any sense to me. But then you look at the university that gave him that PhD in constitutional law, and you realize that it was a pay-for-play university that ended up getting shut down because they were selling, it was unaccredited, and they were selling doctorates. I mean, it's exactly like Thief Damon Jones with his PhDs from his own university that he made. It's meaningless. It's not worth the paper it's written on if it's actually written on a piece of paper in the first place. So you want to actually look up, if you're going to cite someone as an expert, you want to actually make sure they're an expert. You don't want them to be a reporter, an opinion reporter. You want to make sure that they're an expert. They know what they're talking about. And finally, so we've established that not all sources are equal. And there is a reason why you don't cite to YouTube. There's a reason why you don't cite to conspiracy theory websites. And it's not because you're biased against them. It's because they have a very low reliability factor. They're not likely to lead you to the truth. It's not a bias. They're not peer reviewed. They go counter to all of the evidence, all of the learned treatises. Experts in learned treatises all disagree with you. Well, it's probably not a conspiracy. It's probably just not true. Finally, the last piece is, though, that be careful in trying to extrapolate. Common sense is bullshit. If anybody ever tries to make an argument that common sense says X, Y, or Z, they're wrong. They're wrong. Common sense doesn't exist. There's a reason why they're having to make that argument to you. It's because your common sense is differing from their common sense. There is no such thing as common sense. There might be a popular opinion. There might be popular sentiment on a particular subject, but there is no such thing as common sense. Everybody has different abilities to process data. Everybody has different amounts of knowledge at their disposal to be able to kind of cross-check against, to assess the validity of various arguments, of various statements. But there is no such thing as common sense. And so when you're trying to extrapolate from a piece of known literature, let's say you have a known science article that is a good science article, it has a high impact factor, it has never been shown to be wrong in any measure, and you want to extrapolate from that to get to something else, that's where you need to stop yourself, because you don't know all the factors. If a scientist was going to do that, a scientist would set up a controlled experiment. to try to verify. He'd have a hypothesis. He would then try to falsify his hypothesis by conducting an experiment designed to falsify the hypothesis. If he can't falsify the hypothesis, then he'll publish it, or even if he does, I mean, he may publish a paper either way because there might be some data in there that other scientists can use, or maybe they won't have to repeat the experiment knowing that it won't work. But my point is they'll test for it. You don't have the same kind of knowledge that a scientist has. You don't have the ability to test it like a scientist does. And you don't know. I mean, you're assuming what the result is, but you don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things in the world that just don't behave the way we think they would behave. Like waves, that if you split a wave and it goes down two different paths, one's longer than the other, but it gets to the destination at the same time. But neither wave sped up or slowed down. Like weird stuff that just doesn't make sense on a common sense level, but it makes sense in science. Light reacting to gravity, bending around like stars and things like that. Weird stuff that you don't understand, that doesn't make sense on a common sense kind of basis. That's why you can't extrapolate necessarily from a set of data to get to a new hypothesis. You don't have a good likelihood of having an accurate result. Anyway, I'm kind of stumbling at the end there. I think you understand what I'm getting at. Be careful trying to extrapolate from known good data. You might get to the wrong conclusion because you don't know enough. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'm sure I'll have plenty of experts in my comment section telling me how wrong I am. Have a great day.